Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm Richard and this is Lap of the World. You join me for what I'm going to call part 4.5 of our major service series on our 1992 NSX back here. The series now brought to you in part by ATR Racing, aka NSX-parts.com, for exactly what the URL implies. Link in the description to check them out. But what we are doing today in our major service series, while we are waiting on things to arrive from Austria as well as some other places, is probably a little bit of taking care of a little bit of prep work that's going to be necessary prior to beginning our reassembly, which, with parts in hand, is the next thing that we'll need to do. Some of this involves prepping some, or chasing some threads in preparation for installation of some special bolts that we're getting that apply to both our water pump and our oil filter pedestal. And we're going to talk about the process of thread chasing, the tools you'll need, as well as kind of the secret of those special bolts as implied in the thumbnail. But before we get to that, I'm going to attempt a little bit more parts cleaning. While I have things apart, I thought it was a good idea to kind of continue my, tidying things up, because frankly it's easier to spot problems when you're working around clean parts and a clean engine bay. Now to do that, this is going to be a little bit of an experiment. I'm going to try a different technique for this because I found something in my closet. That's right, folks, this is a no fooling as seen on TV steam buggy that I found while spelunking in my storage room the other day. As far as I know, this last belonged to my late grandmother, and rest her soul, there should be no surprises at my using the same thing to clean my car parts that she used to clean her draperies. She did raise my father after all. So assuming it still functions, let's see how well this actually works tackling the caked on axle grease on this CV joint shield. The answer, at first blush, looks unfortunately to be not very well. Now, I did try hitting the part with a little bit of brake clean and some light agitation to see if that would allow the steam to get in and do more work, but even then the results were somewhat underwhelming. So for the setup required and the mess created, it really isn't worth it. So if you're considering a steamer to clean tough, greasy parts at least, maybe look elsewhere. Well, you can't win them all, and I guess it was worth a try. Let's move on, though, to some bolt holes that are in need of a little bit of thread chasing. Now, as to why they need thread chasing, well, let's go ahead and cover our thumbnail topic, which is this stuff. Now, nearly all of the bolts on the NSX are kind of quote-unquote special, but very few are labeled as such or labeled for replacement in the shop manual. Nearly all the bolts on the NSX, for the record, are Dacro coated or Dacron coated, which is the kind of like the greenish, greenish tint that a lot of the bolts take on. And that is a preventative coating for galvanic corrosion because you're attaching steel stuff to aluminum stuff. They have just the plain Jane Dacro coated bolts do have a kind of replacement schedule, but you're not set to replace them every single time. You can reuse them a handful of times before the stress of tightening and loosening them wears through the coating on the threads. These bolts, though, are actually labeled as special bolts and that you should replace them. And that is because they have this stuff molded into them. Now, I don't know if you remember a few videos ago, as I was removing the filter pedestal, I said this. If you are inexplicably an engineer that worked on the original NSX and you know definitively the answer to that question, please leave it in the comments below. We would all benefit from your knowledge. Now, I said that mostly in jest because I understand my situation. At the time of publishing, I've got less than 3,000 subscribers, so in the realm of YouTube, I am effectively nobody at this point. So what I did not expect to happen was for an actual Honda engineer to reach out to me and say, "Hey Richard, let me tell you something about that Schmoo. I watched your video, it felt like you were talking directly to me." And under condition of anonymity, because I guess who else knows who's watching this, he was able to share with me that this is neither a thread sealant nor a thread locker. It is in fact both. It is a proprietary compound that the details of which will not be disclosed. I don't know them. But it does both functions. It comes molded onto the bolts, and the exact compound is apparently not available on the open market. I'm assuming probably some exclusive deal with the manufacturer. Other manufacturers may have kind of similar stuff, but I don't know anything about that. So that kind of settles the debate that was going on over, there were three camps of people prior to my kind of doing the research on this, and it was, put the bolt back in dry and just torque it to spec, put some thread locker on the bolt, or put some Honda Bond on the bolt. And granted, people from all three of those kind of trains of thought have not had any ill effect from doing so, but I'm here to tell you that the most correct solution is replacing the bolts when you go to do this service. The bolts, these are not particularly expensive bolts, and with the exception of the water pump, which I think has 9 or so, but the bolts are only like, they're a few bucks a piece. So a lot for a bolt, but hey, it is what it is. So that is the secret of the Schmoo, is it's secret, but it is both a thread locker and a thread sealant. So the problem then is what we need to get to next is to go and chase the threads, because if we go to put a new bolt in that has the Schmoo molded to it, and there is Schmoo left in the hole from the bolts that I took out that were the special bolts, or the prior mechanics who have gone back and just used Honda Bond or used a thread locker, we need to get rid of that stuff before we put this stuff in so it can perform to spec. So let's go do that. First things first, it is very important to note that the tool I'm going to use to do this is not a tap. This is not a tap. This is a thread chaser. A thread chaser is used to clean existing threads. A tap is generally used to create new threads. If you use a tap, this is basically the same size as a bolt that you would put into the hole, only it has these cleaning channels in it and this space up here. So as you twist, as you thread it in, it gets, it captures any crud in these grooves and is able to extract it to the top without kind of grinding it further into the threads. A tap is going to be a fractionally larger diameter than this, and it will actually cut into the existing threads and enlarge them. You do that too many times, it can actually affect the function of the threads. And that's not really a good thing when said threads are in your engine block. They make some that look like this, and they make others that look like this, which looks like just a normal bolt, but it has kind of a groove in the bottom, again, to capture crud. How you use these is you put a little bit of grease on them, or a little bit of grease in the crevice here, and then you just sort of thread them in. They should be very easy to thread in, because again, they should be the same size as a bolt that you would put into the hole. Again, these are not taps. If you don't want to think about that too hard, I have left some Amazon affiliate links in the description where you can buy either a set of these things or some of these things, which are in at least one of the sizes that you'll need. It may be in multiple sizes, but I know this set has all the sizes that you would need for at least this job. So again, I'm just going to put a little bit of grease on there, kind of in the channels mainly, on this guy. So you can see I'm just running this one in kind of by hand. If you need a little bit of extra help, or if it kind of gets stuck on some particularly stubborn crud, it does have a hex on the end. And this set anyway, it's like 11 millimeters. I would not put any real torque on this. Like if it feels like it's getting difficult to thread in, then I would stop threading it in. And then I'll spin it back out. Right, and you can see we have captured some nice debris there while not jacking up our threads, because again, this is not a tap. Now I just need to rinse and repeat for the other 8 holes on the water pump and 2 more on the filter pedestal. So one last tip on the thread chasing. I found that when you do extract this, it kind of ends up dirty itself because you've used it to clean other threads. So to clean this, I've been using the other half of the set that I got, which is these external thread chasers. So I just thread chase the thread chase, give it a little squirt of solvent, and they're good to go. So now though that we have chased all of our threads, we should be ready to go once we get our dowels in that we're waiting on to reinstall the water pump. And then obviously after that we'll get eventually to reinstalling the filter pedestal. But I don't have that stuff yet. I don't have the dowels yet. So that's where we're going to have to call it for today. Thanks again for watching. Thanks to ATR Racing, again, NSX-parts.com for NSX-parts, for sponsoring this series. But that is where we're calling it for today. Again, thanks for watching. I'm Richard. This is Lap of the World, and I will see you guys in the next video, if not at the track.